He believed his wealth made him untouchable until the judge said two words that changed everything. The courtroom was full. Cameras lined the back. Reporters typed quickly, whispering updates to each other. The air was heavy with that unique tension reserved for major trials, the kind where everyone present knew they were about to witness a turning point. At the center of it all sat Richard Sterling, a billionaire, a man who had built his empire on sharp strategy and relentless ambition, a man who thought the rules applied to everyone except him. Sterling leaned back, looking completely unbothered. His suit was custom-made, a white shirt underneath, no tie. It was his way of showing he didn't play by anyone's rules. His cufflinks alone likely cost more than the average juror earned in a year. His expression? Amused. This felt like just another board meeting, one he could control and leave unscathed. As the murmurs settled, the bailiff called out, "All rise." The room responded. Reporters, lawyers, observers, even the jury stood, everyone except Richard Sterling. He remained seated, arms folded, with a faint smirk. A ripple of confusion spread. Reporters took note. Jurors exchanged glances. The prosecuting attorney clenched his jaw, already sensing how the day would unfold. Then Judge Mia Adams entered. She didn't need to raise her voice to command attention. Mid-50s, sharp gaze, and calm authority. She'd seen arrogance before. She'd ruled over executives, politicians, and powerful men who thought status offered protection. She didn't glance at Sterling, didn't pause, didn't acknowledge his defiance. She took her seat, adjusted her robe, opened her file, and declared, "Court is now in session." Her voice was composed, but the room's energy had already shifted. Everyone wondered the same thing. What was Sterling trying to prove? And more importantly, what would he do next? His refusal to stand wasn't just arrogance, it was a message. The silence thickened. Whispers echoed through the room. A young reporter leaned toward a colleague. "Did he just—" she asked. "Yeah," came the reply. The court clerk barely looked up. The bailiff shifted, waiting for any sign from the judge. But Judge Adams? She didn't react. She proceeded with routine. It was the kind of composure only a seasoned judge carried, denying men like Sterling the satisfaction of seeing they'd caused a stir. But the rest of the courtroom wasn't so composed. Jurors exchanged uncertain glances. Some older members frowned, their annoyance visible. The prosecutors stayed focused, though their lead attorney gripped his pen with growing pressure. Across the aisle, Sterling's legal team sat calm, unreadable. They were used to his behavior, paid well to ignore it. But even they sensed this was different. Sterling wasn't just another rich man with a top lawyer. He had spent years bending systems to his will. But now he faced Judge Adams, a woman with a flawless record who didn't care for wealth, reputation, or games. She was there to serve the law. And today, the law had come for Richard Sterling. Cameras captured everything, footage of Sterling. Staying seated spread fast, online, on TV, in newsrooms, and yet Sterling looked bored, like someone who already knew how things would play out. Then the charges were read. The atmosphere shifted again, but this time the weight was heavier. The prosecutor stood, smoothed his jacket, and spoke clearly. "Your Honor, the state presents its case against Richard Sterling, charged with securities fraud, bribery, and obstruction of justice." The words rang out, firm and undeniable. Most people already knew the accusations, but hearing them in court gave them finality. It grounded the reality of what was unfolding. Sterling adjusted his cufflink, keeping the same indifferent look. But those familiar with his history knew this was uncharted ground. For the first time, he might not be able to buy his way out. Judge Adams nodded. "Proceed." The prosecutor stepped forward. He wasn't just delivering a case, he was confronting one of the nation's most influential figures. "For 15 years, he began, Mr. Sterling operated one of the most elaborate, financial fraud schemes of our time. Through insider trading, market manipulation, and offshore accounts, he stole from investors, laundered money, and bribed officials to stay hidden. Some jurors reacted, furrowed brows, stiffened postures. He thought he wouldn't get caught. He believed his power made him immune. But we bring evidence that proves Richard Sterling knowingly and repeatedly broke the law, damaging thousands of lives in the process. He turned briefly toward the defense. And today, he must be held accountable. Sterling's lead lawyer, Daniel Graves, stood before that message could settle too deeply. "Your Honor," he said, smooth and measured, "Mr. Sterling maintains his innocence. The state is painting a picture based on theory, not fact. The defense will show these claims lack credible evidence." Judge Adams gave a small nod. "Continue." The prosecutor moved to the evidence table, picking up a folder. Holding it for a beat, he asked, "Mr. Sterling, would you like to address the court?" For the first time, Sterling responded. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, his smirk gone, not replaced by fear, but something colder. He exhaled, shook his head slightly, and leaned back. "No," the prosecutor remained steady. "Very well." But then Sterling did something unexpected. He stood up, not to speak, not to make a formal statement. Just stood. A rustle moved through the courtroom. Confusion. This was the man who had refused to stand for the judge, the man who dismissed the charges like they were beneath him. And now he was rising, without warning. Judge Adams lifted her gaze, waiting for an explanation. Sterling didn't speak. Instead, he reached into his suit jacket. The room held its breath. The bailiff moved slightly, defensive now. A juror flinched. Tension spiked. Then, slowly, Sterling pulled out a folded paper. Not a weapon, not a threat, just a document. He unfolded it carefully, fingers smoothing its surface. "Since everyone's so eager to lock me up," he said, voice sharp, "I figured it's time you saw the full picture." The prosecutor frowned. "Mr. Sterling, this is not your time to speak." Sterling ignored him. "For weeks, I've watched the media turn me into the villain. And sure, I get it. Billionaire, easy target. But here's something they've left out." He held up the paper. "What if I told you some of the people involved in this case committed the same crimes?" Gasps, whispers, reporters scrambled. Judge Adams leaned in. "Mr. Sterling, sit down or be held in contempt." Sterling turned to face her. "With respect, Judge, I think you'll want to see this." He placed the document on the defense table. "I have evidence," he continued, "that several top officials tied to this case have engaged in financial crimes worse than what I'm accused of." Shock rippled through the courtroom. Even Judge Adams, who had stayed calm until now, studied him closely. This wasn't just about Sterling's guilt anymore. It was about who else might be involved. For a moment, everything stood still. Then the courtroom burst into quiet chaos. Reporters typed furiously. Defense attorneys exchanged uneasy looks. Even the prosecutor's jaw tightened. Judge Adams raised her gavel once. "Mr. Sterling," she said firmly, "place the document down and sit." He offered a faint smile, his posture confident. Slowly, he set the paper down but didn't sit. He leaned forward, both hands on the table. "I'm not saying I'm innocent," he said, "but if I go down—" He paused, scanning the room. "I won't be the only one." Now the courtroom had a different kind of focus, not just on him, but on who else might be exposed. Judge Adams replied, calm as ever, "You're making serious claims, Mr. Sterling. Do you have proof?" He nodded slightly, tapping the paper. "More than enough." The prosecutor stepped in. "Your Honor, this is clearly a distraction to shift focus from the charges." Sterling didn't turn to him. "Of course you'd say that." The room tensed again, then something few expected. Judge Adams leaned forward. "If your claims are legitimate," she said, "you will have a proper opportunity to present them. But understand, This court is not your stage. If you think you can control this process, you are mistaken. For the first time, Sterling's confidence wavered. This judge couldn't be moved, couldn't be bought. She held his stare, the courtroom silent. "Bailiff," she said, "collect the document." An officer stepped forward, retrieved it. The entire room waited. Would she take it seriously? She didn't open it. Instead, she set it aside. Sterling's jaw tightened. "You're not going to read it?" Judge Adams didn't flinch. "This is a court of law, Mr. Sterling. Not a place for leverage." The weight of her words settled heavily. For the first time in his life, Richard Sterling had no control. She continued, "The evidence against you has been examined in detail. The charges, fraud, bribery, obstruction, are supported by strong proof. Shifting blame does not change your actions." Sterling swallowed. "Therefore," she said, pausing just long enough, "this court finds you guilty on all counts." The room erupted. Reporters scrambled to post the news. Observers gasped, some in disbelief, others in relief. Sterling didn't move, still gripping the table, still processing what had happened. Judge Adams wasn't finished. "You built an empire on deceit. You believed wealth made you immune. That justice could be bought. But today you learned something different. This court answers only to the law." He closed his eyes briefly, lips pressed tight, looked around. But no help came. He had spent a lifetime gaining power and alienating people. Now, when it counted, he stood alone. "Your sentencing will be scheduled," Judge Adams said. "Until then, you'll remain in custody." "Bailiff, remove the defendant." The officer approached, placed a hand on Sterling's arm. And just like that, Richard Sterling, the billionaire who thought he was untouchable, was escorted out in handcuffs. The cameras clicked. The world watched. Justice had been served. Power can bend rules, but it can't erase truth. No matter your wealth, it's your integrity that defines you. Richard Sterling had everything except that, and in the end, it was the one thing money couldn't save him from. If you believe justice should never bow to power, share this story. Let the world see no one is above the law.